to kill you. You don't have a legal right to have somebody put a contract out on your head and execute you. So there are some things that the law, just in order to protect people, does not allow. That door has been, I mean, the floodgates have been open, certainly in Europe, for these kinds of things. But there is a distinction between euthanasia and what's happening in this case, because euthanasia is by consent. I mean, unless it's a minor, which is really horrendous. But in this case, he has not given any kind of consent to having his food and water removed, and he cannot give consent. And so the presumption should be that he wants to live, not that he wants to die. And that's what's so dangerous about these cases, because they set a precedent that, and for our legal system to start entertaining this notion that people don't want to live, they actually want to die. And that is very, very dangerous for society, and certainly very, very dangerous for this young man.
And as she put, she doesn't put much of a importance about his life at all. That's just like abortion. They don't put any, well, if they're not seen or whatever, or if they're mentally ill, whatever, might as well put them down because they don't have any value.
And that's what it is that we are now in a society that measures people's worth by what they can so-called contribute. I mean, we should be aware, this is a very Marxist and materialistic notion. This is certainly not a Christian notion that our worth is determined by our kind of arbitrary ability to give something back or to contribute. That is not at all the biblical notion or the Christian notion of the sanctity of human life, which is that we were created in the image of God. And that in itself is what makes life valuable and worth protecting. So this has been an enormous shift that's been over time. I mean, this is not something that's just been in the last couple of years. The shift has been going on, as you said, really in the last 40 years or so, really having to do with Roe versus Wade, separating people into classes between wanted and unwanted and giving them different levels of protection depending on which group you fall into. And again, this is very dangerous. History shows us what happens when we do this. I mean, we've seen genocides, we've seen the Third Reich, we've seen all this in history. Yes, a very just this is not where we want to be, and particularly in this country where we do, at least allegedly in our founding documents, talk about that we are all created equal. We are created in the image of God, and for us to go that route, that very materialistic and utilitarian route, is it's really
we're trying to go the way we were fighting in the war.
Yes,
against that Nazism and communism and all that. Now we're starting to turn their way instead of what we're supposed to really be.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, that we have fought wars over this very thing. I mean, the last World War was fought in large part over this very issue of the sanctity of human life, that you don't divide people into categories. And, I mean, that is genocide. And we see that with abortion, certainly in this country. I mean, 65 million babies killed for no other reason than they weren't wanted. And then now we're really starting to see it with disabled people, brain injured people, mentally ill people who cannot stand up for themselves.
If they don't give, why let them live?
Yeah.
You know how it is?
Yeah.
It's sad, isn't it?
It is really heartbreaking, because it's terrible for obviously the individuals, but it's so devastating as a culture to see this happening and to see so many people buying into this. I mean, this is the whole premise behind assisted suicide, where people are thinking, well, if I'm going to be a burden, then I don't want to live. And it's really an indictment on all of us that we have not communicated the message that every single life is inherently valuable and worth protecting.
For a Christian, Satan is the one behind it.
Yeah, yeah, it is a really evil.
Trying to kill off God's children.